Hey, welcome y'all! That's right. This is a Pregame Engineer Tailgate Mayor Racing Podcast, episode number 73 for Tuesday, November 22nd, 2016. Had to think about it as always. I'm Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace. I'm joined in the PETM Podcast studio with Pregame Engineer Andrew Sherwin. What's up, dude?
Hey, man. It's Turkey Week.
Turkey Week.
Gobble, gobble.
Yes, sir. It's officially the start of the silly season.
Like, late.
We're
Really
in
late.
the off season?
Like, silly season, like, hit the thing that, like, gives you the star on Super Mario. It started glowing, gotten real fast.
Yeah, we're running like crazy. It got kicked off hard. And we're not going to miss a beat, y'all. We've been promising you we're going to bring you every week that is absolutely possible, which right now is all the weeks. And we've got a lot of great stuff lined up, a lot of great guests lined up. Sherwin's been on the horn, been on the phone, talking with people. You don't want to miss it. And just to kind of show you that we're men of our words, right now, so friend of the podcast, if you've been following along on Twitter, Matt Weaver, he's been stuck in Daytona with a issue with his vehicle. He's pretty much, I don't know any other way to put it than I texted Sherwin and said something along the lines of, should we just take advantage of Weaver here?
I think we have a captive guest. So
captive is right. I think he's going to be bored down there in Daytona, not doing nothing. And for the first time, I get to introduce him as the Associate Motorsport Editor with Auto Week magazine. Can't be more happy to say that, and AutoWeek.com. It's Matt Weaver, y'all. What's up, Matt?
You know what, guys? School is out for summer, or I guess in this case, the winter, and you're not allowed unless you work in the industry. That's right, you're not allowed to say that. Oh, Denny Hamlin got in trouble for that one.
Uh-oh.
Were you guys familiar? Did y'all read that tweet by Denny
did.
Hamlin earlier today?
Yep, absolutely did.
What was it?
He said you're not allowed to count down until Daytona until you've traveled the way NASCAR competitors travel.
Weird.
It's like, hey, man.
Yeah, that's probably not the right thing to say to a fan base that, just adores your product and wants to consume more and more of it. Look, I get where Denny's coming from there. This is a hard life to live. This is a very strenuous travel schedule. I am pooped. I am absolutely exhausted. I get where Denny is coming from, but that's probably not the best avenue to express your desire to not count down the days to the Daytona 500. I'm just saying.
No kidding, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, NASCAR would do better with whatever the new sponsor is to go ahead and put out the NASCAR off-season advent calendar that starts with 97 little squares on it.
Ooh, with like a little thing.
Maybe
of
I should be on their
whiskey in
marketing
each
team. Yeah.
Something like that. Well, Weaver, we'll get into what got you stuck in Daytona. We'll get into Auto Week magazine. Well, get into if Rusty's voice will deal with him. We'll get into Auto Week magazine, but the first thing we always do, you're on the road now. You got the truck all fixed up. She's looking pretty. So what you drinking to get you on the way?
Oh, well, you guys know how I roll. I am the most pretentious coffee-drinking journalist in all of national motorsports. And so today it is a Starbucks handcrafted venti caramel macchiato from the city of Jacksonville, Florida.
Ooh.
Oh, wow. You about to break Ricky Bobby's hand on the pool table there?
The ventis. He's got the
Jean Girard.
The extra large. Yeah, Formula. I was hoping you might troll us with something and say, you know what? It's been a long day, boys. I'm on the road and ain't no cops around. I'm drinking hard whiskey. But yeah, so let's get into it, y'all. We'll start with By the Numbers. It's episode number 73. As it turns out, Sherwin, 73 wasn't really a popular car number.
Yeah, I think
kind of crazy.
You probably had to dig into some series that were outside of Cup, but I always leave that up to you, and you do it how you want. So,
well, first off, I got a couple guys we'll talk about. First off, Bill Schmidt. Bill Schmidt had 42 races in the number 73 car, 20 seasons from 1974 to 1993 in the Winston West Series. It's now the K&N Pro Series West. He did race 42 races in the Cup, but 19 wins in that West Series, 24 poles. He won the West Series. This is cool. in 1977, 1979, and then skip ahead 10 years, another decade, to 1989 and 1990, which is pretty
really
cool.
cool.
Isn't that neat? He's in the West Coast Stock Car Hall of Fame, and was a legend in that series, and one of the guys that really made that series grow. So Bill Schmidt, he passed away 2 years ago in November of 2014. So we're raising the glass today, Mr. Bill Schmidt, in the car number 73 on PETM 73. But I ain't done quite yet.
All right.
I just had to take a little sip there. So Johnny Beauchamp. Beauchamp, am I saying that right?
Beauchamp.
Beauchamp.
Yeah. Franche.
So 14 races. The reason I bring him up, he's the only person to have wins in the number 73 car. So he's got 2 wins in the 73. Listen to this. He started racing right after World War II. So he's one of the NASCAR OGs.
OG.
Yes, sir.
Goodness.
So here's a funny, interesting story. In the 1961 Daytona 500 qualifier, he and Lee Petty were in a wreck, and they both went over the wall in turn 4. Like, off the track.
That's the one they show all the time on the
See you later.
flashback while we're waiting to see actual
Right?
real races. Like, they'll show that like 75 times on February the 3rd.
That's insane. I mean, thinking about thinking about today's safety and all that. I mean, I know we still see some of that stuff in the dirt series and stuff. We'll see that every once in a while. But just thinking about 2 NASCAR cars going over the wall in turn 4 in Daytona.
Yeah, they went right through the guardrail
it's
and
insane.
then just disappeared into nothingness. I have a very vivid picture. I've watched that replay footage, I don't know, probably 50 times thanks to FX1 or NBC Sports or ESPN.
Matt, you seen that one?
Yeah, that was actually a part of the old Fox broadcast open for years. So that's the one that always people remember when it comes to NASCAR on Fox. And like you had said earlier, it's clear in my head exactly which crash you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Beauchamp, he passed away in 1981 at the age of 58. So we're raising our glass a second time here for that. Sherwin, while we're raising our glass, tell everybody what we're drinking on here.
Well, so today I had to drive up to Greenville to meet with my new boss.
Ooh.
And I thought, well, I know Greenville's got a couple breweries, so I'll just search the closest one to the restaurant we had our meeting at, and then I'll hit that up, get something to take home with me. And so I went to, what was it called? Upstate something or other?
It says it on the sticker you gave me.
Yeah, it does.
Upstate Craft Beer Company.
Upstate Craft Beer Company. So it's a craft beer company right there in downtown Greenville by the river, where not only can you buy your personal brew supplies, you can actually sign up to brew your beer on their equipment, and they have a tap room with 4 or 5 of their beers. They have 6 other South Carolina local beers, and then they have a cabinet with beer from all over the United States, and it's like a bar. So it was really neat. I enjoyed it was one of those impromptu decisions that turned out to be thumbs up.
Yeah. By the way, I don't think we've...
the name of this is the Intergalactic Warrior Double IPA. And they had a Galaxy Warrior they did, apparently. So the head brewer was there. He was the one pouring me my beer. And apparently they just piled up all the leftover grain remains and hop remains and said, we're making a beer. And see what happens. And he's like, turned out pretty good.
Excellent. Excellent. I don't think we've been on the podcast since we did these little deals, but nice stash, Sherwin.
Oh, yeah. I got the Movember, the handlebar.
You got the handlebar
going on.
I've just got the straight up Freddie Mercury, just give me a stash.
Yeah. And then we both are wearing vintage Casey Kane hats. Mine is from that one year he did with Red Bull with his Casey Kane Racing number 4 badging.
Yep. And I don't even know which one I put on. Oh, the old number 9 with feathers. So good deal. So now that we've ignored Weaver for so long, appreciate you being on, Weaver. We'll talk to you next time. First thing, I think the whole community has gathered around you on this one. Tell us about this associate motorsports editor with Auto Week magazine and AutoWeek.com. What you're feeling right now, how that came about, and what how it's been feeling with the response you've gotten.
Yeah, it's been cool for me on a lot of different fronts because Yeah, make no mistake, this was a big win for me and my career because this is the dream job. This is the job that you work towards your entire life whenever you're a part of any industry. This is the kind of scenario that you envision. So starting on December 1st, I will officially be the associate motorsports editor of Auto Week magazine and our website, autoweek.com. Basically, I am second in command on the racing side of Auto Week's property. You know, Auto Week has two very distinct things that we cover. We cover, you know, car culture and the automotive lifestyle. But we also have the racing section as well. And more or less, what this means for me is that I'm basically going to oversee the website. This is my primary responsibility. Is I'm going to be, you know, in charge of making sure that our website is up to date, current, is socially modern, is active across all the different forms of motorsports. I'll still be super present in NASCAR. That will be my primary beat. I'll still be at 20, 25 races. But I'll probably be at a lot more IndyCar next year. It won't be a surprise if you see me writing an F1 story if the occasion calls for it. I'm going to work very closely with the staff that we have in place there to make sure that everyone's on the same page and, you know, kind of trying to work towards this vision of making Auto Week a really cool place, not only for NASCAR fans, IndyCar fans, whatever, but all of motorsports fans. But more importantly, this is security for me. I feel like I've been very, very open with my friends on social media about the kind of lifestyle that I've had to live the past 8 or 9 years chasing racing, where there's been a lot of driving across the country and sleeping in my truck. And I love it. I feel like I've been paying my dues, and I feel like finally paying my dues has paid off. And, you know, to me, I see this as a win for the people that enjoy reading my story. God bless the few of you that do. But if you enjoy reading my stuff, you know, you're in luck because you're going to get a lot more of it. And I've got a lot more stability now. There was one point this season where I was writing for, you know, 6 different outlets on one given weekend. Like, take the Daytona 500 weekend. I was working for Auto Week, Racer, USA Today, Popular Speed, About.com, and a newspaper in Dawsonville, Georgia, to cover Chase Elliott, all on one weekend. And it's really hard not to complain because I love what I do and I love the access I have and the history that I get to witness, like on Sunday, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it's really difficult to have any sort of strategy when you're just trying to meet the minimum requirements for each of those outlets. Now I have one thing that I need to focus on, and my sole purpose in life for the foreseeable future is making sure that Auto Week is one-stop shopping for racing fans, especially on the website side. And so, you know, a lot of people have said thank you, and they've told me that they feel like that I deserve this, and they're happy for me, and that's cool because I've always tried to be really personable. I try to make a connection. I love coming on shows like with y'all because I feel like it's a chance to humanize me a little bit, because it's really hard to read someone's work and you just see this as kind of a invisible writer. I want people to know who I am and what my background is, and I think that's kind of been reflective on, you know, the sort of feedback that I've gotten for this deal, because people have rallied around me and given me a lot of congratulations. So that's cool. I love what I'm doing, what I'm going to be doing, and I love that it's something that you guys enjoy too. So hopefully this is just the start of something really special.
Yeah, well, you know, the first time we had you on, and the second time, and I forgot to do it this time maybe, but we had said the hardest working man in motorsports journalism, and that was heartfelt. That was absolutely not tongue-in-cheek or anything. We even talked about it on that first one about Weaver being in his truck, like you said. I know you can't see Periscope right now, but you're getting all kinds of props with the PETM posse here. So yeah, it's really cool to see. How excited are you to get into these new avenues? You said, of course, Indy, F1. That has to be pretty fun.
Well, I will say that it's not a huge departure from what I've been doing on the Auto Week side, because I've been with Auto Week now for nearly 2 years as a freelancer. And, you know, I've got to, you know, give a shout out to my boss at Auto Week, Mike Bryson. I actually met him, and this is a good story for anybody that wants to work in racing, or really anybody who wants to work in any dream job capacity of trying to always keep your connections up to date. I first met my boss, Mike Bryson, at the inaugural F1 race in a Coda in Texas, and I had never been to an F1 race. I was invited to be a part of a hospitality group. Actually, I was working at SB Nation alongside Jeff Gluck, and Gluck was invited to go to this race. And Gluck had to decline because it was the same weekend as Homestead that year. And so he offered it to me, and I went to my first and to date only F1 race. And in that group of like 7 or 8 different reporters or bloggers was Mike Bryson with Auto Week, who at the time himself was the associate motorsports editor. And
cool.
We hit it off, and we kind of see the world through a very similar lens. We have a very similar sense of humor, and we just kept in contact. And again, this was 2011.
Wow.
And, he said that he would read my stuff and we would keep in contact. And at the time, you don't think anything of it. But, we add each other on Facebook, and he reads my stuff, and he tells me all the time over the next 3 or 4 years, your stuff is really good, and I love what you write. And one day we're going to get you on at Auto Week. And, I like hearing that. My ego needs that sometimes
Sure.
when you're on the road sleeping in your truck and you're just trying to get by and you have negative $74 in your bank account. But here we are now, 5 years later, and Mike told me several times, we're going to get you in at Auto Week. Your stuff is good. We want to lock you down and give you a full-time deal. And here we are now, starting December, 5 years after we first met. It came through. And so I think that's a good message for anybody who wants to work in the sport or anyone who has a dream in general. Make sure that you shore up on your connections and you build your social network, because you never know when it's going to, play out. It took 5 years for it to play out, but a relationship that I forged at an F1 track of all places, eating sushi, which is something neither of us had ever done before at that point, pays off 5 years later. And I think that's a cool story. I mean, I'm talking about myself, so it's kind of meta, but I think it's cool for anyone who has a dream, who wants to work in NASCAR racing or any avenue to do it the right way, and you can do it.
So the underlying message there then is eat bait with a mentor, and you're going to eventually get a good job. I had sushi tonight, by the way.
I love me some sushi, but eating bait, now that's funny. Y'all got to laugh at that now. So I don't know if you owed the karma gods a couple points or something, but somehow you ended up in Daytona for a little longer than you expected. So what's going on?
Well, I never expected to be in Daytona again until February. So it's funny. I actually had this kind of reflective moment on my way to Homestead, Miami for the championship weekend this weekend. I drove to Homestead from Charlotte, and I got about halfway there. I got to Florida, and I had to pull over to fall asleep because I had been driving all night, and I was just tired. And so I was sleeping in my truck once again, and I kind of had this cool moment where it's like, I shouldn't have to do this anymore. I've been sleeping in my truck to cover a lot of races over the past couple of years, and this will be the last time, because my plan was to roll into Homestead, and I was lucky enough to have a room this weekend and cover the race weekend, do my job, and head home, and then start my new gig next week. So driving back from Homestead yesterday, I developed a bit of a power steering issue. I'd put some fluid in my truck, and it was just spitting it right back out. And I'm trying to nurse it just to get it back home, and I'll take care of it later. You guys have all been there. Sometimes it's like, just get me home, and we'll take care of it later. But driving from Miami to Charlotte is a bit of a haul, and
Yeah.
You can't necessarily nurse a truck from Miami to Charlotte with ease. And so I get to New Smyrna, which is about 30 minutes south of Daytona, and this thing finally just kicks out. I spit the serpentine belt out, shred it to hell, and at this point, the battery's not charging, so the lights are starting to get really dim on my headlights, and I'm coasting. I'm trying to make sure it stays awake and alive, and finally it's starting to go out. The lights are completely out, and of all places, the exit that I found myself at is the one at Daytona Beach for the Speedway. So I pull out onto International Speedway Boulevard, and I find the Pep Boys directly across from Daytona, and I pull up there at 10 o'clock at night, and of all places for me to find myself one more time, sleeping in my truck is right outside of Daytona, where it all began. And, it's funny what life throws you sometimes. It sucked, and it sucked to have to sit at Pep Boys all day, and we can get into that too, the reasons why I had to stay there all day. But there was something really fateful almost about being forced to stop there at Daytona, because I remember in February, having to balance 6 different media outlets, dreaming to myself, one day I'm going to have one. And to me, Daytona has always been the field of dreams of NASCAR, because that's where you start the season, and that's where you start thinking about what the season could be, what it could be for your career. And here I am in November, 1 week before starting what is truly my dream job, and I'm parked, broke down right outside of Daytona, dreaming about what's going to come and what's next. And so it's always about dreams in Daytona. So of all places to break down, at least it was Daytona, because that place has a very special meaning in my heart.
Man, that sounds like at least a blog story, if not front page Auto Week sort of story that needs to be written for sure.
It's the precursor to your preamble that you'll tell in like 50 years to like
when you write the book,
your kids or whatever, however that goes down. Like this is what you got to do to make it in the sport that you want to make it in the occupation you want to make it in. And sometimes really weird-ish happens along the way that provides you
the irony,
with this
the coincidence.
Excellent story to look back on that maybe was no fun at all to deal with at the time, but really just it's like the mortar that holds the bricks together when you don't quite have enough mortar.
Yeah. Well,
a part of me hates to share these stories because it sounds kind of showy. And at the end of the day, I'm here to talk racing, and that's why we're all here. We like to talk about race cars, but I do feel like at the same time, I've lived a really interesting life, and I've been able to see some really interesting things along the way. And at some point, we probably should just do a podcast where we sit down and talk about some of these stories, because I have been arrested at Daytona International Speedway for doing my job on one occasion. I have been kicked out of a Walmart parking lot for sleeping there. I have showered, I'm using finger quotes, I have showered under a Home Depot sprinkler system at midnight while the sprinkler kicked on, because that was the only running water I had access to, because I'm sleeping in my truck. Stories like this. I had someone walk into my truck once because I was parked in a Walmart parking lot, and this girl thought that I was her friend or whoever she was looking for, and she opened up my passenger door. I've got my underwear hanging off my door, and she's like, "Hey!" And then she realizes I'm not who she thought I was. She's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," and slams the door. Stories like that, that's really good stuff that could make for a great book. It'll make for a great podcast. So at some point, we should probably sit down during the off season and just share those stories. I've got some doozies.
Count it.
Yes.
We're in.
Absolutely. We'll have to do our homework on the strange, interesting interactions we've had at races with different people.
Yeah, no
or
kidding.
the course of life or whatever. But, those are all going to make great stories for the book you write about 15 years from now. And you know what? I can't help but think about the time at Bristol when I just had that, like, whatever moment where I recognized you from your avatar, and I was like, "That's Weaver."
Yep.
And you were like, "Hey," and like it was that that initial. I don't know who you are, you don't know who I am, but we were chatting on Twitter for maybe a month or so.
And that was a year before we even did our podcast,
and that was probably 2011 or 2012.
Yeah. That was before. At least a year before we did a podcast. So that's awesome. Let's start talking about NASCAR. How about it? Let's do some teardown.
Oh, do we do it? Is this a NASCAR podcast?
As it turns out, we sometimes talk about NASCAR in this thing. Let's build it up.
Was there a big race this weekend?
There were 3 big races. It turns out.
Rumor has it. Rumor has it.
Well, Sherwin, let's start with trucks. And I'm gonna blow the horn for you, dude.
Oh, the grandpa fart horn. For me.
There it is. You get it for trucks. You called it Johnny Sauter.
25% chance of getting it right.
Might as well. Johnny Sauter takes the cup. Always, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the brevity of the race or the style of racing these guys do or the way the trucks are. I mean, that was just such an exciting race to watch. I enjoyed every lap of it. Had a blast, and I chose Crafton, and I was rooting for Crafton. We've got a picture of Crafton holding the PETM sticker out there, so I'm all about that. But Sauter, great story there and everything. Really, I mean, all the guys that were in the chase, as predicted, should have been there. And,
the old guard beat the young guns. I thought that was fun.
That's a good story, too. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, great race there. Weaver, any thoughts?
You know what? There's a lot of thoughts. First of all, about the truck series in particular, you had said, good racing, all season long, the package, whatever. The truck series might be my series of the year. It's something I try to do at the end of every year, and it's something I'm going to do again on Auto Week. I think the past couple of years it's been, some combination of K&N or the Penske series. But this year, IndyCar was my series of the year 3 years ago. But I feel like the truck series this year, consistently, week in and week out, has been the absolute best tour across all of motorsports. It's been so engaging. And it was only fitting, in my mind, that the season would come down to a race as good as that one was. First of all, by the way, I love Homestead. So we'll talk about that with trucks, with Xfinity, and with Cup. People think that I'm just a short track guy, or they think that I hate big tracks or downforce track. That's really not true. I hate D-shaped intermediate speedways.
Except
Atlanta. Homestead is the even Atlanta right now is sometimes hard to watch because of the tire package. Traditionally, Atlanta is one of my favorites too, but just the D-shaped ovals are just redundant. But Homestead is such a good package. It's like a giant, or I would say giant. It's a larger version of Darlington. We talk about the Darlington stripe all the time, but let me tell you something. Homestead put it to shame this weekend. There was not a single car truck across 3 tours that did not have a stripe on it, and that's BA. But talking about the trucks, to me, if you boil down this entire season and you boil down this entire race, let's talk about GMS, because I think their story is so good. If you look over the past 3 or 4 years, there's been a bit of a exodus from the truck series. Some teams leaving, pulling resources out. Richard Childress has left. Eddie Sharp has left. And so it seems like right now a lot of people have lost faith in the truck series. And in that exodus, Maury Gallagher saw opportunity. And he first tested the waters in ARCA, came there in 2011. He joined the truck series in 2013, and he has employed a lot of really good, really talented, and really smart people to come join the truck series team. They've got this huge shop in Statesville, which is a borderline Sprint Cup shop. They build Xfinity Series chassis as well for other teams, and in the process, have really created a really good home for a lot of people who had lost their jobs. And it's a real good family environment. We all know, some of the characters that work there, and they're a tight-knit group. They've created a cool platform for Spencer Gallagher to put his personality out there. And he is one of the absolute underrated, smartest minds in all of racing. He's only been racing since he was 16, 17 years old, but he gets the business side, the motorsports side so much. We know him as a jokester, but he's a really smart guy. We all know how talented Grant Enfinger is. He won the ARCA championship last year for GMS. And now you've got Johnny Sauter, one of the most polarizing names in all of NASCAR, part of the legendary Sauter family. But through GMS, Johnny Sauter, who's been around forever, gets what he probably should have gotten a long time ago, which is a NASCAR championship. He is good enough to. And so you just put all that together, and I'm happy for GMS. They're a cool group of cats. They're a great team, and you could make the argument for any of the 4 guys, and maybe even 5 if you count William Byron. But it was just a fun season. I'm sorry to be so long-winded, but I love trucks this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't even limit it to this year. I think trucks is the best series in NASCAR. It just doesn't have the most exposure or the most money or whatever you want to call it. The racing itself, like what happens on the racetrack, that series is so entertaining.
We've got buddies who are not necessarily NASCAR fans, and they come and they say, "I'll buy," and they've bought tickets for the whole weekend before. And nowadays, it's just more money than they're willing to spend on that, which I can understand. But they say, "I'll buy a ticket to the truck race. Shoot, $20 for the best race." And I know it's going to be the best race this weekend when it's triple header kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, that just goes to show it's even going to bring in everybody, especially at the exposure or at the price level. Hopefully it can get that exposure. But anyway, let's move it on to Xfinity, where Rusty gets to blow the horn.
Oh, you get the horn. You got the 25% marker.
That's right.
Well done.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Daniel Suarez. And I tell you what, let's just put it this way. Sherwin, what does this mean for NASCAR, for Daniel Suarez?
It means as much as it could possibly mean. Like, there's no initially there's no bubble you could pop and say these are all the things that have been written about NASCAR diversity that we should talk about. This has burst a bubble that should have been. Well, I don't know this. I wouldn't say it should have been burst a long time ago. I mean, we have to get popularity amongst that crowd to get into a race car, but to have Daniel Suarez, especially after they did that special ahead of time, like that was so good. Mm-hmm. I just think this is about as good a thing as you could have happen right now for NASCAR.
And on the heels of them announcing that they're going back to Mexico for some races too, how insane, I just got goosebumps, is that race going to be? I'm talking about. I kind of want to go to Mexico now for that race. What do you think?
I've been to Mexico City a couple times. I lived through it. Granted, it was for work.
Yeah.
But, I mean, hell.
Weaver, what do you think?
No, it's a huge story, you know. Daniel Suarez is such a nice guy, first of all. I think sometimes we get so wrapped up talking about diversity, and we should, because NASCAR has a very long, storied history of not being diverse, and they have really strengthened that effort over the past decade. So I want to give them credit for that. You know, the Drive for Diversity program, getting behind Rev Racing and creating that platform for drivers like Daniel Suarez to advance up the ranks. But I think sometimes it gets lost in this conversation about him being a Mexican champion, a Mexican race car driver, that we just forget the fact that he's a really good race car driver. He's a really good human being, and we don't have to put that Mexican disclaimer in front of it every time, because I think sometimes it, you know, dilutes the fact that he is a nice guy, that he is a great race car driver by itself, and that we shouldn't put that add-on in front of it. But yeah, it is a good story. It's a win for diversity. It's a win for the Drive for Diversity program. It's a win for, you know, some of the programs that NASCAR has put into place, and certainly it does come with it.
Lost Weaver there for a moment.
Oh, yeah, we got some dead space.
It's all good.
Somewhere between Daytona and Savannah.
Yeah. You know what, though?
I think it's one of those things where you don't get too caught up in saying he's a Mexican race car driver. He's a race car driver from Mexico.
Isn't that a George Carlin joke? He's a race car driver who happens to be a Mexican. Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's really cool. Sherwin, so we had this Cole Witt situation. We'll try to get Weaver back on here in a bit. We'll see if he's able to get back on with us. But the whole Cole Witt situation at the end. So Cole Witt is in the front row or whatever, and, you know, off tires and all that mess, and you know, pretty much just stacks the field up. Should NASCAR do anything to prevent that situation going on in the future?
No. That should be a self-policing situation where they just never make that kind of a decision.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's I don't know that you could write a rule that would be specific enough to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
Like, the competitor has to know, hey, okay, so, all right, if I think that not pitting because I don't have any tires left because I couldn't afford an extra set or whatever everybody else had, or maybe I spun a time somebody didn't, so I tore up a set, doesn't matter. If you don't have tires and so you don't care to pit because you already have enough fuel, you can't take the preferred line. If you want to stay out and say, well, I still want to get the best paycheck we can get, you know, from the best finishing position we can get, you can't pick the preferred line.
Yeah. So I think I agree with you here, which is, number one, there needs to be sort of the gentleman's rule, not a NASCAR rule, because I agree. I don't think there should be anything that they...
In golf, there's not a written rule that you can't talk during another golfer.
Yeah, or you can't stomp in front of his line
right.
or whatever.
Yeah, but you don't.
Right.
Because you're not an a-hole.
Right. So
and never
don't
mind
be an
that it's
a-hole,
the last
is what
race
you're
of
saying.
the year.
For the championship now.
The 4 cars that were racing for a championship were in the top 6.
Mm-hmm.
There was you and one other car, and you made a really bad decision, Team 14. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you're right there. It's more of a gentleman's rule kind of thing, and it's not, like you said, not taking away that preferred line, and you're going to cause some stuff. And so maybe the amount of ridicule that's happened will prevent it from happening in the future.
I sure hope so. But you thought that would have been over when Kevin LePage pulled out in lane 1 with the field coming at him in Talladega in turn 1. Like, I mean, come on, man.
Come on,
everybody
man.
should learn from that going, oh, that's a bad idea. Now, we haven't seen it since, and that was like 07.
Right.
We were watching that race from your couch in your
At
old
the old apartment.
back,
Yeah.
down there at Lenox. And it was like, what the hell's this guy doing?
Yeah.
And it's the same. It was the same things, Saturday afternoon, late evening with, or early evening with Cole Witt. It was like, and we don't want to blame Cole Witt. Cole Witt doesn't make that decision.
Except the line.
Yeah, I mean, well, no, because the
think?
crew chief and the spotter told him to take the line. It's 3 guys that should have made a better decision. Together, the 3 of them should have had more perspective. And now, if you listen to Door Bumper Clear this week, they gave a much better response. I would encourage you to go listen to them, spotters who actually know what's going on. They've done the job. They understand. And there's no reason for us to elaborate over the top of the things they've already provided out in this same podcast space. But not good, 14.
Not
Learn
good.
something from this.
Not good. Well, let's go to Cup. And this is the big reveal. Not reveal. Everybody knows what happened. But, the big topic this week. Here's. I almost thought of it immediately after the race ended, after everything that happened. And it's something that y'all, Sherwin says this a lot, and I know he got it from somebody else or whatever, but Sherwin drives this point a lot, and it entered my head as soon as it happened. And that is that luck is where preparation meets opportunity.
Yep.
And you can call the 48 lucky in this situation. You can call it whatever you want, that it shouldn't have happened. But y'all, he was prepared, especially starting in the back like he did, and having to move up. You can say what you want about Chad Knaus, all that sort of stuff. But Jimmy Johnson did what he had to do to get up there, get prepared to be in the right position, and then when the opportunity presented itself, which you could call that luck, whatever you want to call it, but that opportunity presents itself, he's there. And then that last restart, holy crap, he just takes off. Right when, I think, because me and Sherman, we got together to watch a race, of course. We wanted to watch it together. And, right before the last restart, it was just, all right, this is Joey Logano's then, I guess. So let's watch him win this race. Mm-hmm. And Jimmy takes off. And suddenly me and Sherwin are standing up. And we're walking. Sherwin's got whatever it is, 55-inch TV, 60-inch TV. And we're standing a foot away from it.
Oh, yeah. Like leaned in.
Leaned into it. Talk about captivating, was seeing that 48 take off, just going, oh, man, we actually got us a race at the end of this thing.
Yeah, a lot of y'all have probably not experienced our level of enthusiasm about live sports. But, when live sports happen, we're not, when exciting moments are fixing to happen, we don't sit down. We stand up, and we walk about 3 feet away from the television, and we stare at it with a beer in hand going, what in the hell is about to happen?
Right. So watching that and our eyes glued on the television, and him to take off like that, then it was like I said, we've got a race now. What's going to happen? And the captivation in those last couple laps, holy crap. You can call it manufactured and all that, but I guess at this point I'm a pawn of the manufacturing, if you will. Not saying I endorse this style, but it does make some captivating racing, and that's what NASCAR wanted here, and I think they got it right here, especially with Jimmy Johnson taking the win here.
Well, here's the thing: is if I don't get to be in the room that decides how the chase is going to play out in terms of the rules and the eliminations, then I just have to get excited on race day for whatever is about to happen, right? So there's no reason to be lamenting what the process is on race day in the race moment. You're wasting your time being upset about things you have no control over. So why not just embrace it and get really freaking excited?
Yep. I totally agree. And so let's back it up a little bit. We had Carl Edwards pretty much running away with this thing, and it's such a bummer for him in that respect.
Yep.
And then they throw that late caution, 19 laps left for debris, Jacques Debris
Jacques Debris.
decided to come.
Jacques Debris.
I don't remember. Did you remember what that debris was?
Nah, it wasn't debris.
Some little plastic piece
oh,
or
hey, we
something?
got Matt.
What's up,
I'll
Matt?
keep talking. It was.
Hey, sorry about that, guys. We roll into Georgia, and apparently, you guys have nothing resembling a signal in this great peach state of yours.
Well, so everything between Jacksonville and Savannah is kind of hit or miss.
It's
really
spotty. It is. We just go a little bit slower here in Georgia than everybody else does. Just take your time, have you some sweet tea, eat you some collard greens, and we'll get back to it.
No, that's what I was going to say. I didn't get to it. We're getting heckled on Periscope there. Yeah, it wasn't debris. It was the 32 car cutting a tire. And
I thought that was the second one.
No, the second one was.
The second one was Carl.
No, the second one was Stenhouse.
Yeah. Okay.
Getting loose on his own and smashing into the inside wall right off of turn 2.
So the debris was caused by that tire cut down, and
no, it wasn't a debris caution. The caution was because the 32 cut down a tire, and he was in an unsafe part of the racetrack.
I got you.
Not.
Yeah. If I can kind of cut in here, that's exactly what happened. The 32 had spun, and it spun below the line. And, if we're being totally honest, that was not a reason for a caution. And I think we all know late in the race, we're looking for some excitement, some drama, as if we didn't have enough already. Anyway, I think NASCAR sometimes feels obligated to crunch everyone back together, and that kind of set everything in motion for what happened next. And of course, that last caution was for the 17, and the irony there is they were so quick to call that caution for the 32 below the line, and yet when the 17 completely destroyed itself and was littering parts and pieces all over the track, NASCAR wanted to wait to call the caution. So there's really a question of consistency there, and I know there's a lot of fans who are upset about that, and I'm telling you, they should be. I'm not trying to rail on NASCAR. I understand that not every situation is the same, and NASCAR has said, look, we defer on the side of caution when it comes to these matters, but when you look at those two cautions and the way that each one of them was handled, especially if you're a Carl Edwards fan, you have the right to be a little bit peeved that it played out the way that it did.
Agreed.
Yep. And Matt, while you were gone, we were talking about Jimmy Johnson, and I had brought up a quote that Sherwin had told me several times that sticks with me that I thought about right when he won, which is that luck is the point where preparation meets opportunity, meaning he was prepared to get there, he got the opportunity to get there, and he got there. And so we have actually a comment or a question from NASCAR Behind the Wall at NASCAR BTW, and he asked, what does Jimmy's 7th Cup championship do for his status in the sport? Here's a funny thing for me, Sherwin and Matt, is that I can pull up some old recordings of us in the last, I would say, 6 months where we've had a similar conversation, and with 6 championships under Jimmy's belt, I was calling him the greatest of all time. And that's stacked up right against everybody else. The all the Pettys, all the Earnhardts, everything.
Well,
and so to ask, what does this do for his status in the sport? Well, I mean, I guess it only solidifies for me the opinion that I had. And if I can come to the table with all these stats and all these reasons why I think he's the greatest that ever was, and you can come to the table with stats for a few other people, and we can hopefully respectfully disagree or agree with each other or whatever, but I think he at least, at the very least, I can bring those stats to the table, and there's not anything that you can be pointing at me and cussing at me because I'm wrong or anything. Sherwin?
Oh,
what were you saying?
Sorry. Yeah, I guess it was my turn. No, what I was saying is, and I actually reworded Richard's question there, just because I wanted to frame it up a little bit better. Basically, he had a conversation all across Twitter today about how impossible it is to try to compare Richard and Dale and Jimmy because they didn't overlap really at all.
Right.
In terms of the champion. When they were the best, they didn't overlap at all. And it's like, why don't we just allow ourselves to say that they were the best of their time? Jimmy's clearly the best of our time. But then we go back and we talk about how Like those guys back in Richard and then even into Dale's days, they were racing barehanded with rags in their mouths and stuff. And like, they're wearing bicycle helmets and like it was a different game altogether. But why would we limit ourselves? I think this is an American society thing. Maybe it's a human thing that we have to hoot the best. Like NASCAR is so different from what it ever was. Like we can't compare the 85 Bears to the 72 Dolphins. That's just dumb.
Right.
Well, played against each other.
It's a good point. I mean, we watch UFC and stuff, and if you're UFC fans, like, it was Hoist Gracie the best ever? Well, he did one thing really well, and he played, I think what you're trying to get at, he played the sport that was in his time better than anybody else did, and better, maybe better than anybody could today. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, is Brock Lesnar better than Hulk Hogan? Like, why is that? That doesn't need to be a conversation. They're both awesome.
Yeah. Weaver, what do you think?
I totally understand what Sherwin's saying there. I mean, that's there's some validity there. I mean, it's so hard to compare because unlike baseball or football, I feel like you can compare that Dolphins team to that Bears team because they're playing the same game. Where you can't even really compare the game that Richard was playing to the game that Dale's playing and the game that Jimmy's playing because in many ways it's not even the same game anymore. Everything is so different. The tracks are different. The engineering is different, but because it is our nature, I do believe it's human nature. It's not just an American thing. I feel like it's human nature. We have to quantify everything, and we have to stack everything against each other, and we have to rank them. And I really do believe that pound for pound, it gets no better than what this 48 championship buzzsaw has done over the past decade. Because to me, what makes this team so great is that they are playing in an era where NASCAR has the rule book so tight, and you realistically show up to the racetrack every weekend with the possibility that 15 teams could hit on it and win that race. Now, granted, it's usually the same, 5 to 7 characters that are winning each week, but it's not that out of the ordinary to see a scenario in which Kyle Larson can win a race, or Ryan Newman could win a race, or Casey Kane could win a race. You've got 15 teams that could hit on it and win a race, and yet there's one constant throughout this entire period, and that's Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus and this 48 team. No matter what NASCAR throws at them to say, you're not winning. And it's funny because fans like to believe that NASCAR is always trying to rig the system in favor of the 48. To the contrary, they're trying their best to stop them because, Chad Knaus plays this game better than anyone else, where you create a rule and Chad dreams of some part or some way to get around it. We saw that on the course of Sunday. It's kind of like this seventh championship was a representative of his entire career. They roll out on the grid, they're clear. They get past the NASCAR inspection station, and then NASCAR reels them back in and says, no, this part's not okay. You have to start in the back. And it doesn't matter. He's in the top 10 30 laps later. And he runs like a bag of booty for most of the afternoon. And yet, circumstances play out. They were looking for a Hail Mary, and like I said on Twitter, they got hellfire and brimstone instead. But when they had to capitalize, they did. And it's stuff like that to me that tells me they're great. We talk about how awesome Jeff is, but Jeff wasn't able to beat Jimmy head to head. Both of them in their prime, and Jeff. This is kind of like the thing where if you beat one guy and you beat them, that makes you better than both of them. So Jeff beat Dale, and Dale beat Richard. So, but lost in all of this. Here's the most important thing: we can talk about championships and how the format has changed. And by the way, Jimmy was so good that NASCAR changed the format, and he wins anyway. But forget the formats for a second. I'm all over the place now. But to me, the number that makes him really good is he's got 80 wins. He's got 80 wins. Forget the championship format for a second. It doesn't matter. In an era where 15 cars could win over the past decade and a half or so, he's won 80 times. Case closed, conversation done. He's the GOAT.
I agree. And this is the comparison I'm going to provide is the reason why I agree. The second best driver during that same time span. Now, granted, he had 3 less years on the track in a Cup car than Jimmy. But the second best driver during that same time span has 1 championship and 38 races. So he has 1/7 the number of Cup championships and less than a half of the number of races. And that's Kyle Busch. So, yeah, I mean, Jimmy.
Right?
We're seeing something really special.
Yeah. Well, we need to bring it to a new segment we're going to do over the next 6 weeks, the silly season.
Uh-oh. And, Matt, you feel free to comment or not comment. I don't know if this gets you in trouble potentially or not. There are some things that are 100% certain, and there are some things that are rumors. But
right.
Given the nature of our show, it's fun to talk about a rumor.
For sure. Well, we know one thing that's absolutely for sure. Greg Biffle is throwing in the towel on Roush.
The Biffle missile is done at Roush Fenway Racing.
What the hell does this mean? Like I figured he was retiring with Roush next year or the year after. Did we talk about it on the podcast? I think we even said.
I think we did because we threw it, as we often do, to Door Bumper Clear because they seem to have the inside track on things.
Yeah,
like
some
this.
scoop. But still, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, so Biffle's 47 years old. The weird thing about this announcement is not that Greg Biffle is retiring and didn't take the opportunity to do a retirement tour, which, if you're competing head-to-head with Tony, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that he's just announcing that he's leaving Roush for the next thing that he's going to do in his life feels an awful lot like Greg Biffle's retiring from NASCAR racing.
Yeah, at least from championship contention. Matt, what do you think?
Okay, so this is a little, insider here.
All right.
The thing that I would keep an eye out, and this is by no means 100% official, but this is the conversation in the garage. Biffle had pretty much planned out his exit several months ago. It was just a matter of getting to Homestead and then making it a formality. JTG Daughtry is strongly looking at the pieces to put together a second car. A.J. Allmendinger put together the best season in company history for the 47 team. A great year. They didn't make the chase this year, but if you look at their overall body of work, they were at their most consistent. They have the alliance with RCR. They're receiving good equipment. And they've just really hit on some stuff. Randy Burnett is a really underrated crew chief. One of my late model guys, I love me some Randall Burnett. But they've got a good thing going there, and they think they could, leverage some of their partners and get a second car. They've got a really cool, strong relationship with all those sponsors there. What is the brand there? The charcoal brand.
Kingsford.
Help me out.
Yeah, they got Kingsford and they got Kimberly Clark through Scott and Clean Guard.
Yeah, so all those are related businesses, but they think that they can put together the stuff to get a second car. Now, they're probably going to need a charter as well, but for whatever reason, over the past 3 to 4 months, the name that keeps popping up in relation to a possible second JTG Daughtry car is Greg Biffle. So look, if Biffle was retiring, that would be part of the conversation. He would say, you know what, after this, we're done. And he's not a guy that wants a ceremonial, fan farewell, retirement tour. He would just leave. I think Biffle believes he's got a good chance at getting something else to at least give him one more last chance at a chase appearance, something he probably was not going to get with Roush. The writing is on the wall. Roush is in trouble right now. They let go of Robbie Reiser today, who's been there forever. I think everyone sees that Roush is not the team it used to be. You've got Stuart Haas Racing coming over to Ford. Roush is an afterthought right now at the Ford Motor Company, and I think Biffle saw an opportunity to maybe have one last chance, maybe not at a championship, but at least at getting him some top tens and a chance at a chase berth, and it very well could be with JTG Daughtry.
That's very interesting because I heard that rumor, and what I also heard was that Roush was going to lease the number 16 charter to JTG Daughtry. So Chris Buescher could run that car. So it'll be very interesting to see how those plans are finalized as we head, deeper into the off season.
For sure. So let's get. You know what? I can't believe we've been talking for an hour now. It's crazy.
Always.
Let's get into some fun stuff. Travis Campbell at TravisC_48. He's asking us, do you guys ever have any party fouls at the racetrack? So any sort of party fouls that happen at the racetrack, I would say.
We had one at Darlington. I did.
Oh,
I broke your chair thing. Because I went man down.
Sherwin breaks stuff. I'll tell y'all what. Sherwin has broken my cooler, and then he broke my other cooler.
I tear your coolers up like it's nobody's business.
He's broken 2 of my coolers. He's broken 1 of my chairs. I'm just going to blame on Bristol. We'll just say it was his fault because he breaks stuff. He broke my truck.
Well, we got it stuck that one time for sure.
Well, we got it stuck. This past time coming back home from Bristol, straight up Matt Weaver story where we broke down
right. It malfunctioned.
We had to
do some troubleshooting along the way.
Yeah, we had overheating issues, which luckily that was in we're in Gainesville, Georgia, so that was only like 30 minutes from your house.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to get some cold water in there and
was it busted thermostat? Is what it ended up being?
No, a completely busted radiator.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah, $650 later.
Yeah, it was spitting
spitting water out everywhere.
Yeah.
Yep. So a few little party fouls. Did you like the old Bristol or the new Bristol better? Travis Campbell asked too. So let's kick that one over to Matt Weaver. What do you think, Matt? Old Bristol or new Bristol?
Well,
there's 3 Bristols
I like
now,
both. It's hard, but I really like New Bristol. I loved Old Bristol too, and I try to make sure that before I give an opinion on anything, because I know I'm very opinionated. I want to have a large enough sample size, and I feel like now at this point we've had enough of the New Bristol because there was kind of in between Bristol as well. I like it. I really do. I don't think it's awful. There's a part of me that has this romanticized vision of what old Bristol was. And look, I do miss it, but I don't think the current Bristol product is that bad. I go both ways. I still think at the end of the day, I'll tell you this. I would choose Bristol in its current form over races at Chicagoland, Kansas, and Texas. So, I'm totally fine with how Bristol is right now. So that I go both ways.
Yeah. I'll tell you
what. Well, Charlotte at night, unfortunately, that's not a good race.
No.
It's not. Richmond, we proved this past year, moving it to the daytime, awesome race.
Mm-hmm. So for me, it's not as much about Bristol as it is the car.
But how about when they put the drag strip buggers down? That got fun.
Well, that was interesting at least. But I really liked. We've talked about it before. How back 10 years ago or whatever it was. A lot of times the car that crossed the stripe at the end of the race was. It had no quarter panels. It had no hood. It was a piece of junk, beat up, and they've tore stuff off and got at the end of the race, and it was fun to watch. That's more of a consequence of the car than it is the track. I really like that, but we're never going to get back to that. So if you ask me which track you like better, I'm kind of with Weaver on this one. I go back and forth, but I'll take what we have. I'm not upset with what we have.
I would say for me, there's been an evolution. When I first got into watching NASCAR Cup racing, I loved Daytona and Talladega. I could figure out, going to Atlanta, that was fun just because we were there.
Mm-hmm.
And Bristol, Martinsville, and to some degree even Richmond, I couldn't process that well. And then I started learning how to be a race fan.
Mm-hmm.
And now I completely flipped. What I see when we go to Bristol now, especially, we didn't get to see the Cup race because the rain. We had a really bad year with the weather for us and our schedules. But, what we got to see on television and what we got to see in the Xfinity race, I thought that was a great product.
Yep.
It looked really, really good.
Yep. So, last question. Stranger Stang, dude. Here it goes.
Yeah. And Weaver already knows about Stranger Stang.
Yes, he does. She says, "What's your?" So I'm curious to hear that. I'm curious.
We're gonna
to
let
hear
Weaver go
this
first.
from Weaver. What's your biggest pet peeve of your grandstand neighbors while trying to enjoy a race at the track? So any of your neighbors while you're at the racetrack, could be campground neighbors too, she says. I'll say, when somebody jumps in the middle of while we're trying to do a podcast, like Mr. Jeffrey Weaver, I mean, that just really, no.
Jeffrey Whitler.
Jeffrey Whitler. I said Wheeler. Jeffrey Whitler. No, shout out to Jeffrey Whitler. I actually love when people do that. So I think for me, at Sherwin, if you remember at Atlanta, we switched our seats recently. And partly because of this lady who, and God bless her, she comes from the country, obviously, but she gets into the bottle a bit before the race starts. She's a Jimmy Johnson fan, and she was, 2 rows in front of us. And so we were sitting sort of just left of the start-finish line, and she was just was sitting just right of us and in front of us, so we're looking toward her on every lap. Now, every single lap, I'm talking about 326 laps, whatever there is at Atlanta for 500 miles.
334.
334. She stands up
25,
as Jimmy Johnson is exiting turn 4. She stands up, points at Jimmy Johnson all the way down the front stretch, and as he's entering turn 2, in turn 1, she started dancing, and then she turned to her friend and would laugh her butt off. And she would sit down for the 6 seconds it took him to
do the backstretch.
To do the backstretch, and she'd stand up again. I'm telling y'all, she'd do it 334 times.
She did it 334 laps in a row. Or 25, excuse me. I keep saying that.
At first,
Atlanta's just a little bit longer.
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
corner,
At first, it was kind of funny, but by the end, you're just going, dude's in like 18th place, and you're still doing this, and it's late in the race. What are you doing at this point? Anyway, so
all right, so let's let Weaver go, and then I'll close her out.
Go for it, Weaver.
So what's your pet peeve as
Is that a question?
Yeah, sorry. What's your pet peeve as a fan when you're at the racetrack?
You know what? I really hate to answer this just because I feel like I'm so far removed from being a fan, and that's a terrible thing to say, but I spend so few races in the grandstand, so it's really tough for me to opine. There are certain racetracks that I do like to go to the grandstands for. Like, I always watch Bristol races that are not the Cup races. I watch Trucks and Xfinity from the grandstands, or Richmond, because the sight lines at Richmond are wonderful. But I really don't spend enough time in the grandstand, especially on a Cup day, to really have a frustrated opinion of anything like that. Usually, at those tracks at least, fans are pretty good. So it's really hard for me to think of anything off the top of my head.
Okay. Sorry, I'll close this segment out then, or this question out then. I am very similarly aligned with Rusty. I remember this interaction. I remember Rusty getting so frustrated that we swapped seats, and I remember providing some feedback to that particular fan that I don't remember the exact specifics of, but it's kind of one of those STFU moments that happens at times. But I'm totally aligned with you. Like, pet peeve of the year of the world NASCAR racing is the jerk that stands up and points every single lap when their driver goes by, whether they're in first or last. It's like, we know how to count numbers. They're over there on the pylon, and we've got our headsets on. We're hearing what the spotters are saying. We know where the guys are. We don't need you to point and tell us where your driver is.
Yeah.
Sit down, shut up, get excited when crazy stuff happens or when the race ends.
Yeah, yeah.
Restarts? Yes. Everybody stand up. Act like a fool.
Don't be that guy we're seeing on Twitter.
The pointy, like the waggy finger person.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Sherwin, it's time to start bringing this thing down. And I hate to say that, because
is it already that time?
It's been so much fun. We're an hour and 5 minutes in. Weaver, it has been a blast, dude. Thank you so much for joining, and hopefully we help pass some time on the road there.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me on all the time. It's a long off season, so don't be a stranger.
Absolutely not.
No
We've got to
chance.
get. We've
There's
got to
no
get
chance.
the Weaver story episode at some point. Time to stuff a few jelly beans in our mouth and do a little closeout challenge. While they're downstairs, unfortunately.
Oh, man.
While we're doing this, Weaver, tell us where everybody can find you now.
Well, it gets a lot simpler from here on out. It used to be one of the more complicated plugs of every radio show that I would do, but it's really simple now. It's Auto Week Magazine. It's AutoWeek.com on the web. Matt Weaver AW on Twitter. Matt Weaver Motorsports on Facebook. That's all I got for you.
Cool.
Excellent. Well, y'all know where to find us.
Got a mouthful of jelly beans.
Yep, mouthful of jelly beans going on. I'm Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace at Tailgate Mayor, as it turns out.
And I'm Andrew Sherwin. Sherwin at Pregame ENG.
And like we said at the top of the show, y'all, we ain't even taking a break. We will talk to y'all next week.
Yeah, we'll be here next week for sure.
Peace out.
Thumbs up.